Hello, thank you for coming on here. We're going to talk about effective communication and avoid mistakes in general. This is actually a very interesting topic, especially if you're always constantly arguing. I got this information through transactional analysis, and I kind of do a between other therapists and so. And I find that this is the biggest problem that I have noticed through my consultation and people in general that comes towards me. And then I just find it's a very unique topic. Communication is defined by verbal and nonverbal exchange of information, meaning has feelings in there. And there is no relationship when there is no communication. And ideally, you want to prevent any sort of resistance to any changes. This focus on clear communication and doesn't always means that it's going to solve the problem. What I've noticed, there's always issues like always popping up or overloading or super actually overloading, meaning like you're talking about one thing and then 20 things came like in the conversation and it doesn't need to be there. So, and if you're the type of person who likes to be creative and really wants to go with a flow in communication, this is the one thing that I've noticed it is a problem. And we're going to have to structure the type of communication, how it's going to look like, and if you're being heard. And a lot of time, people are hurt because they're not being heard. So, and I find this a very interesting statistics about it as well when it comes to communication and about listening and speaking. And it's such a wonderful place to be if you know how to use it. And if you have the tools to use it, I think it's very beneficial. And please forgive me if I have even referenced anything that is kind of like didn't do it correctly. Please forgive me. I did whatever I could and I cite my work as best as I can because I do want to credit a lot of these people in their work as well. The next thing that I really want to focus on talking, if you didn't know who I was, I'm Sindy V King. I'm a creator of Calling My King. I help transform women and through lasting love through Vedic astrology and neuroscience. And what you see is the success of cognitive loading. If you've never been on my channel and never seen this before, I think this is a really important place to start with. This is how best you can absorb contents in general. Any information that is longer than 25 minutes, you're not going to absorb that information. And it's recommended you do 25, break for 5 minutes. That's the best way of learning. They said if you're trying to memorize things, it is considered to be the lowest tier in here. And try to understand things, that's still considered to be a low tier, but you're getting better at it. But ideally, you want to apply with this information as much as you can and analyze it as much as you can and evaluate it. That's where it is. When you're evaluating, you're going to find out where the gap is. The only thing is, if you're trying to practice this on your own, it can be very challenging. You need somebody else, like another human being, to practice some of these transactional analysis. And most of the time, I would recommend just go with it. Try to test it out for yourself. If it's not working out, come back. I have a Super Queen membership. That means you go in there, you ask question, I answer. And sometimes I pair you up with other people that are having the same mindset too. So that's what my recommendation. If you're justifying standard or decision and you're kind of judging it, selecting it, if you don't understand something, you're already in a great place to begin with. And because you're already questioning like, oh, I'm missing this information. What am I missing? So you have to find a way to fill in that gap. And when you test yourself, you're like, am I doing this correctly? That is a great thing. It's like, what is my, verbal communication? What type of communication I'm doing with my significant other? This was going to work for any human being that can speak, can put words, strings words together. I think that's really important. The way to be successful when it comes to cognitive loading, you want it to be in your long-term memory, not so much in your short-term memory per se. In my membership, I will upload an hour of this information, and then it's actually going to take a little bit more than an hour per se, but I give you like an introduction so you can start off properly. But this is just like an intro that you can go out there and ask questions and stuff. So that's important here. That being said, let's continue on about the statistics about listening and hearing. So this is what they're saying. Amount of the time we spent, 45% we're spending time listening. And a percentage of what we know, what we have learned by listening, is about 85%. So that's pretty high. That's okay. Amount of time being distracted and preoccupied or forgetful, and when you're listening, that's 75%. So that is no surprise that if you're going to forget stuff from here, no surprise on that one. And how much can we recall immediately after we listen to someone? Only 50%. Isn't that shocking? Yeah, it's only 50%. How much do we remember, and how much, within the next 2 or 5 days, whatever you had, the conversation you had, only 20% that you actually can recall the stuff that we talked about or even listen. So that being said, your learning skills got to be right on par when it comes to brainstorming or how you get it into your long-term memory. This is called the encoding of the brain. I talk about the brain quite often on my channel, especially when it comes to a romantic relationship. We want to be able to recall some of the stuff that our loved one says, and you want to be able to remember it sharply as well. We're not trying to fabricate the story that our partner is saying, but we're being forgetful because it's not properly encoding into the brain. That being said, communication is important. You guys all agree with that? Maybe leave a comment down below and share me some of the frustration that you have experienced when it comes to communication in general. We're not trying to solve the problem. We're trying to figure out what our partners are saying. That's what I'm just mentioning here. Okay, so that being said, we want to go ahead and figure out when is actually a good time to speak to our partner. And a lot of people actually have a big mistake about this when it comes to communication. Okay, if you guys ever heard the Gottman, right? They're known for relationship and therapists. They say the number one reason relationship and marriage falls apart and stuff like that is because of listening. That's the number one. Is a big issue. So this is a good time. Let me show you what it's going to be like if you have the right tools and what it should look like and should not look like, kind of thing. So ideally, this is a summary effect of what we're going to be talking about for an hour in the membership. So I will upload that video and you have a better idea what that might look like as well. So we are going to quickly tell you in the summary, setting a time is important. People are afraid. I don't know why. A lot of time they're like, I have afraid setting a time to have a conversation. That makes it, I talk about this in way back 4 years ago about setting an appointment. That has not changed. And it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. This is actually flagging somebody, say, hey, we need to have a conversation. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad, but I need you to take some time off whenever it's available, when it's right time. We should need to have a conversation, and I want your full divided attention. A lot of the time people are busy and they're kind of not into the whole idea about multitasking. So they're not really good in that place. And why are we actually having a conversation when somebody's in the middle of doing something? That's not appropriate. What is it appropriate if we set time for each other? Doesn't matter through email, work, make it in a habit. It's not in a problem. If you make it into a problem, then it becomes a problem. Do you understand that? So that being said, set a time. Listening and reflecting back is really important here as well, and processing the information in the very beginning. Here's the things what I have said about statistic in general. A lot of the time, people can't really repeat exactly what the other person said. Isn't that shocking? That is very shocking. You can try it with your girlfriend, try it with somebody that you're comfortable with, and repeat exactly what word by word what they just said. And that is one big thing that I have noticed. They start to encode it in a different way. They start to say in the way that they understand, you understand, but that's not the whole point of this exercise. It's about repeating exactly what the other person says. So remember the whole idea about receiving and um, sending information. That is the thing that I'm talking about. If you guys ever had play the game as a kid about telephone, like you had like a tinfoil cup or a foam cup or even a tin in general, and we put a string under at the end of it, and we put another string at the other end, and we try to talk and listen at the same time on the other one. I don't know if you guys play that as a kid, but it's very similar to that. Are we able to encode the information and receiving based on our brain? I understand that everybody has a different brains and everybody has gone through some sort of changes, neuroplasticity that happens in the brain. What I'm clearly wanting to find out if are you able to receive information? You do hear what they're actually saying, and are you able to repeat it back? So that is the really first stuff that you want to go ahead and try it out. I'm giving it as out for free. There's something that's called amigo therapy. I honestly believe that transactional analysis is the original work from it. And I truly believe in that. It's from Eric Burns. So I'm going to just reference them anyway. So that's the mural, the summary, and a validate. And that tends to mean amigos tend to means image. So when we're mirroring off of somebody, that's what we were saying earlier. And if they have more information, then you have to repeat exactly what it is. You have to listen and then you have to pause. You're not trying to respond. You're not trying to react. So if you're a type of person react, this might be a very challenging exercise. I'm going to be really upfront right now where the hiccup can come up is people go into reaction mode and we get into the defense mode, or we should be ideally want to be in a position of encoding the information and be able to repeat it exactly back to them. You want to be able to summarize it and explore what they're trying to say as well. You want to be able to validate somebody. So clarifying, and is there two option? Is it like, do you understand? Are you able to show motions of understanding what their position is like? That's more ideal. And if you don't, then you need to be clarifying that. And you have to be exploring that information as well. Well, if I was in that person's shoes, does that make sense? Ideally, when you get into the validation, that means I'm okay, you're okay. Again, going back to Eric Burns' transactional analysis. The next one, you want to be able to check out. So that's the third point. So check out if this is actually is right. It's the right thing, right? Does that make sort of sense in general? Summarize everything. And at the very end, you can switch it up and end the conversation. I have talked transactional analysis a majority of this channel as much as I can. I want to be going forward and moving forward more information of it. If you need a debrief, I think it's so important to do that. Yeah, so that's where it is. Remember, this is just a summary, okay? That's what I'm going to be covering. Ideally, this is what transactional analysis will look like. This is an exceptional, stable relationship, okay? If you have never seen the parent, adult, child ego, and it's so confusing, I would totally recommend you go and watch that video so that you have a better understanding where it is in your mindset. So person one, person two, these are the levels of ego states that you're going to be speaking to. And you want to be able to speak within that level. You never want to be in a place speaking from a parent to a child unless there is a dangerous situation, right? And this is how your parents have taught you, and you either go into that state. Ideally, you want to be in an adult to adult conversation. Do I understand? You understand? That's what Amigo is all talk about. And you want to be in that best position as well. So I would totally recommend, if you want to review that. I did reference his book on there and the page where I got this in general. So this is my recreation of that. And that being said, we're going to go through all the parent, adult, and child stage of ego. Very important. If you want a really good book to start off with, a really simple one, Dr. Pat Allen talks about this, and this is where I found her work, and I kind of retrace it back from the original foundation. This is how I found out about it. Okay. So her book, her documentary book, where she did her PhD, is called Conversational Rape. Okay, that's the book that if you want a short one to read, that's the book. The next level to that book has a little bit more detail. It's called The Game That People Play. Yes, people do play games in communication. And a lot of people being in the whole victim mentality is about either being abusive. This is all covers all that, okay? And you know how to get out of it. When you hear it, you know how to get out of it. So I recommend you reviewing that information if you want to, especially on your own terms. That's fine. My membership, my Super Queen membership gets this information because this is what they really need, and especially when it comes to communication and relationship. I want to move forward here. Next is the citations. So this is what I would say is part of what I kind of did research. So if anything is kind of validated, you can do a screenshot and look into it and so forth. I did the best I can when it comes to citations and stuff like that. So if I miss anything, I'm not perfect, and citations tend to change all the time anyways. That being said, I want to conclude this video. If I don't see you in the membership, I have great contents on otherwise, I'm going to put up the full video in an hour. But I think honestly, this is like a day worth of workshop needs to be done and masterclass that needs to be done. And I have information on this that I have uploaded as well. And that's on my other Patreon. And I have uploaded information about communication and how to do it effectively. And I give you kind of great worksheets as well that you can practice and slow down the mindset. So I kind of break it down in general. So that's my job as a facilitator. And I want to thank you so much for joining me. I understand that there might be some confusion, and that's okay. But this is the intro, and it gives you an idea where to research. If I'm not the right fit for you, that's fine. Then I want to make sure that you're in the right track and what you're looking for. Okay, so that being said, I want to end our topic today. Thanks.